All right. We are now streaming live on YouTube. We are now streaming live on YouTube. Today is December 9th, 2024. I am Judge Case Johnson. This is the felony preliminary hearing for Mr. Jaquavius Cortez Brown, charged in warrant number 2024 CW 52354, felony murder, and 2024 CW 52355, cruelty to children in the first degree. Representing the defendant is Attorney Thomas Robinson. Representing the state is ADA Thomas. Your witness, ADA.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Ramos, can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the evidence you shall give before the court this morning shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah, I do.
You the record.
Say that one more time.
You can put your hand down and state your name for the record, please.
Detective Ramos
And how you employed.
with Forest Park Police Department.
And did you have occasion were you so employed on or about September 21st of 2024?
Yes.
And did you have occasion to investigate an incident involving Jaquavius Cortez Brown?
Yes.
And did the incident occur at 5730 Jefferson Avenue?
Yes.
Is that within the confines of the city of Forest Park?
Yes.
And is that within Clayton County?
Yes.
And what brought your attention to this, to Mr. Brown?
Well, I was actually the responding officer on that call that day. But I wasn't the lead detective on it. There was another detective that was over the case, and then he got sent to another department, so I took over the case. I think maybe like 6 months later.
6 months.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us what happened.
Well, when I responded to the case, to the call, I saw Jaquavius holding Christian Haney in his arms. Christian Haney appeared to be unconscious at the time.
Okay, let's back up just a minute. Christian Haney, is that the victim?
Yes, ma'am.
And you say he was holding him? How old is Christian Haney?
He was around 5 months at the time.
So we're talking about a baby.
Yes.
Okay. So he's holding the baby in his arms. What was going on?
He had him holding him, and the Christian was unconscious. And from Jaquavius, he was stating that he woke up and he found Christian unconscious at the time, and he tried to do CPR on Christian at the time, but he wasn't responding. And that's when Christian was sent off in the ambulance. The mother arrived on scene, which her name is Antonia Haney. The mother arrived on scene, I'll say maybe 15 minutes later, and then she drove in the ambulance with Christian, and that's when they drove to the hospital.
Now, the mother was the mother not on the scene?
No, she wasn't. She was at work.
What if anything happened?
Say that again.
What if anything happened to the victim? What happened to the child, to the baby?
Well, at that time, we didn't know what was wrong with the baby. We just knew it was unconscious. That's when I believe weeks or days later, like I said, I wasn't the investigator on that case at that time. But GBI did an autopsy on the on Christian, and it confirmed that he had blunt force trauma in 3 places in his skull.
So I'm assuming when the baby arrived at the hospital, that the baby passed away?
Yes, from according to what the EMS stated, they lost a heartbeat when they was getting off the highway. when they were transporting him. But I believe the baby did have a pulse. But the only way he was breathing was on a machine. So that was the only way the child was still alive.
So the child couldn't survive independently?
No.
Now, how did the child sustain the blunt force trauma to the best of your knowledge?
Um, from just analyzing everything, from looking at autopsy, it appears from what the doctor stated from the GBI that his head was hit against something porcelain-like. It wasn't something where you fall off the bed. It wasn't a type of force to where it was something, a hard like object that hit the baby multiple times in the head. Um, I'm not sure how exactly it occurred, but his head was hit more than one time with blunt force.
So you're saying, is your understanding that the baby did not just roll off the bed?
No, it from what the investigator, the doctor stated, it was almost significant damage to where if you was to fall off a top of a building, maybe like a 2 stories or two, and falling straight on cement. That was the type of impact that that kind of force was given.
Did you yourself see the baby at the scene?
Yes, I did. When I saw the baby on the scene, I didn't see any visible marks on him. He didn't have any blood oozing out the head or anything like that. So at the time, we didn't think nothing of it. But GBI pretty much said that most of his injuries was internal.
When you saw the baby at the scene, was he responsive at all?
No,
Did you try to touch him or anything?
no, I couldn't because EMS was mainly trying to do their work on him. So I wasn't, I barely can even really see his face. I try to get much of his face as I can, but I asked EMS, do you guys see any visible marks? And they stated no. Um, and I saw him for a little bit, but like I said, from what I saw, I didn't see any marks or anything on his face.
Okay, let me ask you a question. When you got there, EMS was there, correct?
Yes.
They got there before you?
They kind of actually, yeah, I got there maybe I say 20 seconds after they got there.
Okay. Were you able to capture all these interactions we've been talking about on your body cam?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Have you haven't had occasion to review it?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Now, when all this is going on, Mr. Brown was still there, correct?
Yes.
Did he make any statements to you or to anyone else regarding what happened to the child?
He just said that he Christian was unconscious. Now he did have I do remember Christian did have a scratch on his nose, and from what Jaquavia said, it was from when he was trying to do CPR on the child, and his nails was kind of long. So he said he believed that he pinched his nose a little too hard and caused a little scratch above his nose. Um, but pretty much Jaquavius just said that he woke up, Christian wasn't breathing, and that's when he tried to do CPR on the child. Child wasn't breathing. He called the mom, Antoinette, to tell her that the child wasn't breathing. And Antoinette told him that he needs to call 911. So then that's when he called 911 after that. And that's when Antonia made her way over because she worked in Riverdale at the time. So she came, I think, 15 minutes after the 911 call came out. And that's when she arrived on scene.
So she was there when you got there then?
No, she was not there. She was there when I got there. She showed up maybe I say 10 minutes later after I got there.
Okay. Did you have occasion to speak with her?
Yes. Well, at that time, no, but I've had an interview with her.
Okay. Did she advise what her baby's condition was when she left to go to work that morning?
She said her baby was fine. As far as she knows. I know he was sick. She's saying that he was sick. But at that time they didn't know this what it was. But they figured that he was teething because he was running a fever and he kept crying a lot at the time. So at that time she was just like, hey, I got ready for work, kissed Christian goodbye, and she advised Jaquavius that she was leaving at the time. And that's when she left, and they was at the house by themselves, Jaquavius and Christian Haney at the time.
What is Mr. Brown's relationship to the victim, if any?
At that time they was in a girlfriend and boyfriend relationship.
He's not the father of the child.
No.
Did you see anything around the household or anything that indicated that the child, it had been used to strike the child?
To be honest with you, I didn't get a chance to go in the house. Because I think they was waiting on a search warrant. So I didn't get a chance to go inside.
And you never went in at the time,
No, ma'am.
but you know a search warrant was executed?
Yes.
Was there anyone else at the home when you all got, when yourself, law
No.
enforcement, EMTs?
No. So Antone's aunt lives next door. And that's when can I say it? Antone's mother-in-law called the next door neighbor, which is Antone's aunt, because something was going on with Christian and Jaquavius. And that's when the aunt came over next door while Jaquavius was doing CPR, and she went over there to kind of monitor what was going on. But that was the only time that somebody was in the house when Christian was unresponsive.
Did you have occasion to speak to her?
Yes, I did.
And what did she
And
say?
she just basically said she got a call from Jolene, which is Antone's mother-in-law, and Jolene was just telling her, "Hey, Antone called me saying that something was going on next door. Can you go please check and see what's going on?" And that's when she went over there and knocked on the door, and Jaquavius was holding Christian, and he was unresponsive, and she just basically kind of just was waited there till the police, EMS got there.
So she was still there when you got there?
Yeah, she was on scene.
Okay. Did she indicate if she saw anything or if anything was said to her about what happened to the baby?
No.
Did anyone indicate that anyone else was around the baby between the time that the mother left and the time that she received a call that something was wrong?
No, other than when Jaquavius called Antoine and said that Christian is acting real droopy. And that was the only time that something like that occurred.
But there was no one else in the home other than the defendant and the baby.
Yes.
And the baby was, other than what the mother described as teething, the baby was okay at that time.
So so at the time, so later on we discovered that the Christian had corona. So that's why he was sick and having fevers at the time. And during the autopsy, they discovered that he had coronavirus at the time.
Would COVID have caused injuries to the child's head?
No.
Would COVID have killed the baby? Is COVID what killed the baby, I should say?
No, from what the autopsy stated, it was blunt force trauma.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm just trying to take a note.
All right.
So COVID and the blunt force trauma were completely separate.
Yes. And from what GBI stated, that that those injuries did not occur the night before. They did not occur in the middle of the night. They occurred that morning of. And they stated that if those injuries occurred any later than that, then Christian would have been dead when Anthony picked him up. He wouldn't even have a pulse by the time Jaquavius picked him up.
Says something that would have killed the baby quickly. Is that what they were saying?
Well, they didn't give an exact time frame, but it was definitely within that hour time frame that something happened to where by the time that Christian lost consciousness and lost a heartbeat, um, it's a pretty decent time for an hour to pass that something significant happened to where it caused the death of Christian.
And the baby was still alive when he was transported with his mother?
He was unconscious, and I think they had him on a machine, and I think he was losing slowly losing his heartbeat, but I think the machine was kind of keeping him still alive, and then I guess during transportation they couldn't keep him on the machine because this machine wasn't working to keep him alive.
Okay. And there were no other children in the household?
No.
And the only visible injury was the scratch that the defendant says occurred when he was trying to do something with the baby?
Yeah, trying to perform CPR, so I guess he was trying to do CPR mouth to mouth, and he said he grabbed the baby's nose, and I looked at his fingernails, and he had his pinky fingernail was a little long, and I guess when he tried to pinch it, he said he accidentally scratched his nose. He did have I believe it was like a little mark above his eye, but I wasn't sure if that was a birthmark. Um, to this day, I don't. They never kind of really told me what that was. So I'm not sure if that was a bruise or if that's just something he's always had.
Okay, let me ask you something. Did the victim's mother have any opinions as to what was going on with her child? Or what happened to her?
No, at the time she didn't think of anything. She didn't know what was going on. I don't think at the time she knew Jaquavius had anything to do with it. And it wasn't until we confirmed and told her that it was ruled a homicide and telling her about the injuries that were found. Because like I said, if you looked at the baby, you couldn't really tell if the baby was beat up or anything. Not until you looked at the autopsy pictures and seen his whole skull cracked in 3 places. And then internal
Okay,
bleeding was all throughout the brain.
you say the autopsy pictures, this is during the after and post autopsy, not what you could see just externally.
No, this is post autopsy pictures.
So once they started the autopsy, they could actually see the injuries that the baby sustained?
They were that significant that you could look at the pictures and it's almost like baby basically he had 2 big cracks in his head, in his skull. They got pictures of his skull and you can see clearly two lacerations within his skull, and they were pretty significant.
I think you used the word crack. Is that a better description than laceration?
Yes.
But that's not something you could see externally when you saw
No,
the baby at the scene?
not at all.
Okay. And those injuries were sufficient to sufficient to be considered fatal?
Yes.
Not COVID?
No.
Did you have any other occasion to speak with the defendant other than at the scene?
So Detective Malone spoke with him, and then I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, when he was in jail. And I spoke to him for a little bit, and he ended up lawyering up.
He requested an attorney.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that's all I have of the officer reserve right for redirect.
All righty. Go ahead, Attorney Robinson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Detective Ramos.
Hey, good morning.
So you said that you spoke with Mr. Brown on scene, and at that time he said that he woke up, the baby was unconscious, and he gave CPR, correct?
Yes.
Then, subsequent to that, Detective Malone spoke with Mr. Brown.
Yes.
And what, if anything, additional did Mr. Brown tell Detective Malone about the circumstances?
So from what the interview said, from what I saw in the interview, he was just basically saying that he and Tony got up for work. She got ready. Um, she kissed Christian goodbye, and then, according to Quavius in his interview with Malone, she told him, "I love you, and I'm about to leave." And he went back to sleep. And then I guess Christian woke up, and then he woke up out his sleep, and that's when he tried to pick up Christian and try to give him a bottle, but he was kind of acting droopy, and then he was losing consciousness, and then that's when he said he started beginning to do CPR on the child, and that's when he called Antoinette to tell her that, hey, something's going on with Christian. She told him to call 911. He called 911, and that's when we got there.
Did Mr. Brown tell Detective Malone about any incidents in the child's life in which the child had been injured?
He did mention about there was a child services report about Christian rolling off of a bed or something like that. And from when I spoke to Antoinette about that, she said he was on a mattress and the mattress was on a carpet floor and Christian rolled off of it. And she was talking to her sister about it. And she was on the phone with Jaquavius, and that's how Jaquavius knew about it. But she
How
was
did
like,
child?
nothing significant. Huh?
I'm sorry, keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, Jaquavius made it seem like and Tanae told him about it, but she said that wasn't true, that she was telling her sister about it, and Jaquavius overheard. But I don't believe there was any significant injury to the child at the time.
How did child services become involved?
I'm still working on getting that report from child services. But I don't think it's an open case anymore, as I'm
When,
aware of.
when did this occur?
Uh, this probably happened maybe like a month ago. This is before they moved to Georgia. I mean to Forest Park when they were living in Toccoa.
So a month prior to the child's death, there was an incident that led to child services being involved. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the mother minimized the incident more than Mr. Brown, correct?
I mean, I wouldn't say minimize. She just basically kind of just answered my question. She said that he basically told me what happened as far as him rolling off the mattress onto the carpet.
But she told you
Um,
that there was no injury, correct?
I believe so, yes.
According to Mr. Brown, during that incident, was there any injury to the child?
I'm not sure. I wasn't around for that at that time.
Okay, have you reviewed the interview that Detective Malone did of Mr. Brown?
Yes, I know. He stated to Malone that he told Antoinette that every time he touches the back of the baby's head, the baby he gets he starts to get startled a little bit. Now, from according to everybody in the house, apparently he told Jolene, the mother-in-law, Antoinette about it. And according to them, he never mentioned anything about the back of the baby's head. Now, Jolene, the mother-in-law, stated that she said something to Antoinette and Jaquavius about the back of his head because when she touched it, um, he would get startled. But that's when she said Jaquavius told her that that's probably because I'm combing his hair and she told Jaquavius and Antoinette to stop combing his hair because his hair is not ready to be combed. So that's probably why he was startling like that. But as far as the back of the head goes, that was the only things that I discovered
Okay,
as far as her saying,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm good. I'm good. Go ahead.
All right. So let's unpack that a little bit. So Antoinette said that in that incident, when the child fell off the bed, the child fell onto carpet, correct?
Yes, the mattress was already on the floor and he rolled off the mattress onto the floor.
So he didn't fall, he rolled, according to Antoinette.
Yes.
And did anyone else witness that other than Antoinette?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did Mr. Brown indicate whether the child rolled off the mattress onto the carpet, or whether the child had sustained any other injury?
I'm not sure if he said rolled or fall or fell off.
So he may
But
have.
I don't even think he was even there.
All right, but based upon his knowledge, did he say? You're not sure whether he said fell or rolled, correct?
Yes.
Based upon his knowledge, did he tell you whether the child's head hit carpet or cement or anything else?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. And you talked with Jolene, you said, the mother-in-law?
Yes.
Did the mother-in-law say whether the child's head had hit something other than carpet?
I didn't talk to Jolene about that incident. Because like I said, all this happened in Toccoa, Georgia. So I didn't, and I don't think the mother-in-law was there at the time when all that happened. So she's just kind of going with word of mouth.
But I understand that. And we're in a preliminary hearing, so you could go into that. But my question is, did the Clayton County Police Department or Forest Park Police Department interview the mother-in-law?
Yes.
Was that Detective Malone?
I believe he interviewed her, and I also re-interviewed her as well.
When did you re-interview her?
This had been like maybe a month and some change ago.
All right. Did she tell you that the child had hit and that the child had fallen at some point during its life?
No.
Mother-in-law didn't tell you anything about the child falling?
No.
Okay. Did you interview the aunt?
Yes.
Did the aunt tell you anything about any incidents in which the child had fallen during the child's life?
No.
And did you interview any other family members other than mother-in-law, aunt, mother, and Mr. Brown?
No.
So the sum total.
I also interviewed her father as well.
Did the father tell you about any incidents during the child's life in which the child had fallen or been injured?
No.
So the sum total of potential injuries to this child that has been conveyed to you was this incident when he either rolled off the mattress to the carpet or fell. According to the mom, he rolled. According to Mr. Brown, he may have fell. Is that correct? That's the only incident you're aware of.
Yes.
All right. And in that after that incident, Mr. Brown indicated that when he touched the child's head, the child, what's the word that you use, became startled?
Yeah, like he would like as if something was bothering him, or he would cry.
And did anyone of those people that you interviewed, mom, Mr. Brown, father, aunt, mother-in-law, say that there were any visible signs of injury to this child during its lifetime?
So Jolene, she gave me a few incidences where Christian had a cut on his lip. And at this time, Jaquavius was watching Christian throughout that whole day. and I believe she questioned Jaquavius about the cut on his lip, and according to what she said, Jaquavius told her that he was in the playpen and he hit his mouth on the metal piece in the playpen. And she told Jaquavius to stop putting him in the playpen because he may be getting too big for that. But that was what he said, how he got the cut on his lip. Then there was another time when the baby had puffy eyes as if it was crying all day. At this time, Jaquavius was watching Christian that day, and she asked him why does he look like he'd been crying all day. And Jaquavius told her that there was some trees, somebody was cutting down trees outside, and it startled him, and that's why he was crying. Um, and I believe that's what Jaquavius said in his interview one time. But usually when people had questions about injuries to the baby, that was what Jaquavius stated.
Now, in describe you mentioned puffy eyes. Did anyone ever describe to you that there was a time in the child's life when the child had blackened eyes?
No, I didn't hear anything about blackened eyes. They just said his eyes were like puffy, like as if like a baby has been crying all day and their eyes are watery. And yeah, they just said puffy, as if he's been crying all day.
Did they ever mention blackened eyes to Detective Malone?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. So getting back to this, not only did Mr. Brown say that when he touched the child's head, the child started crying and became startled, but the mother-in-law also said that when she touched the child's head, the child became crying and stuff. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did the aunt touch the child's head during this time frame or not? She didn't describe any incidents of her touching the child.
No, the aunt really wasn't involved like that in next door because she had her own house. So she only kind of just told me what happened when she got there and whenever she drove Jaquavius to the hospital.
And did anyone seek medical treatment when the child would cry when his head was touched?
So no.
And you're not sure whether that incident or another incident is what led child services to become involved in the family's life, correct?
Yes.
You indicated that there was an autopsy. You saw the pictures from the autopsy.
Yes.
Did you review the autopsy report?
Yes.
In the autopsy report, does it indicate that the strike that? So according to the autopsy report, the cause of death was blunt force trauma, correct?
Yes.
That means the child's head came in contact with a blunt object, correct?
Yes. Or his head was hit against porcelain-like material.
All right. And that contact could have come from someone striking the child or the child falling, correct?
I wouldn't say falling because it was cracked in three places.
Well,
So he had three different.
I thought you said that it would be equivalent of falling from 2 stories.
Right, the cracks, the three separate cracks. If he had one crack, it'll be like falling from a building. But he had three separate ones in his skull.
Okay. So a fall could cause one of the cracks, correct?
Right.
And
But if he has multiple cracks, then that's why they're saying it was more than one, whatever type of blunt force trauma it was more than one hit.
okay. So did the autopsy report use the language porcelain object, or is that your language?
I would have to look back at the report, but that's what the GBI doctor told me face to face
Okay. And do you
that
know that
his
doctor's
head.
name?
Uh, so The medical examiner was Michelle DeMarco. And I talked to Dr. Dar Darsaw. And then that's when she advised that when I talked to her in person, um, that's when she looked at the injuries and she said that appears to be blunt force trauma to something porcelain-like, or he got hit with something hard. It wasn't anything soft or anything like that.
Not detective, Dr. Darsa did the autopsy?
No, it was actually Michelle DeMarco, but I think at that time she was out. She was out of work. So I had to talk to Dr. Darsar, which was her supervisor, and we went over the autopsy, and that's when she looked at the results and read the report, and that's what she came up with.
So Detective Darsa read the report of another doctor and came up with the porcelain comment.
Yes.
All right. And Detective Darso, I keep trying to make her a detective. Was it Dr. Darso that also said two-story building, or is that your language?
I believe that was I'm not sure which doctor told me that, but one of them told me that it was significant damage to where it was almost falling off a building.
You spoke with both?
Yes. I think I spoke to DeMarco over the phone when she was at work, and then in person I talked to Dr. Dirasaw.
Okay.
And
But
also
I'm sorry, continue.
and also a lady staff by the name of Brittany Roberts. I don't know if she's an examiner, but I talked to her as well.
But the two-story building came from Darsa, is what you're saying.
I'm not sure which one told me. I know one of them explained that it's like falling off a building. I'm not exactly sure how tall of a building, but it's the the injuries is like falling off of a building.
Okay. The language hitting cement, is that your language, or do you receive that from one of the doctors? If so, which one?
I'm not sure which one told me, but it was that was advised to me. I'm not sure which one said it.
Now, there was no bruising to the child at the time that you arrived on the scene, correct?
No, like I said, he had what appeared to be like a small little bruise above his eye, and then he had that scratch, but that was the only bruising that I saw.
And the bruising above the eye you thought might have been a birthmark.
Yeah, it was something small. I'm not sure. I'm not at the time. I didn't know what it really was. With all the chaos going on.
Was the bruising above the eye that might have been a birthmark, was it in the same location where the skull fracture occurred, or a different location of the child's head?
No, it was in the front.
Because the skull fracture
above the eye.
Skull fracture occurred somewhere else on the baby's head, though, correct?
Yes, on the side, on both sides, and I think in the back.
Okay. And EMS did not indicate to you that there was any bruising of the child's head when they were treating the child, correct?
Yes.
Did you speak with personnel at the hospital?
I was on patrol, so at that time I wasn't able to go to the hospital. So after that call was over, I went back to handling calls. Detective Malone is the one who went to the hospital.
Did Malone make a report of his conversation with the folks at the hospital?
Yes.
Did he indicate that whether anyone told him that the child arrived with bruising?
I'm not sure. That's something you would have to ask him.
Okay. Did anyone ask the doctors, the pathologists, the forensic people who did the autopsy, did anyone ask them how a child could receive an injury consistent with falling from a building and not have bruising? Did you ask that of them? My first question is, did you ask them how it is that the child could sustain such serious and violent injuries within an hour and not have any bruising?
I believe I've asked them that, and they said that there's I didn't get too much of detail with it, but they said that it's possible that you could have internal head injury going on inside the head without actually seeing physical from the outside.
Okay, who said that? You said they. Who said that?
The examiners, the same examiner names that I've told you.
No, there's two people, so I'm trying to figure out, did they both say it or did one of them say that?
I'm not sure at the time. I know when I was talking, like I said, I was kind of having the same conversation.
Hold on, officer. Hold on. And I have an objection at this time. I've just listened to this for a while because I understand, I understand where the defense attorney is going, but we've been going in this direction for a while, and I believe that it way surpasses what would be necessary for discovery at this point. If defense counsel wants to know who said what, I believe the autopsies and all that stuff will be available through discovery at a later point, at a later stage in the process.
I mean, I think that how the child died goes directly to whether or not probable cause exists as to whether this defendant caused the injury. So I'm going to allow it. But counsel, if you can wrap it up, you have been on this for a while.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
And Your Honor, I understand that, if I may respond, I understand that, but what he's asking really has nothing to do with how the child died. He's asking for who said what. I think the officer has testified as to how the child died, but which examiner said what, I don't think is relevant to how the child died. We know that the GBI examiners have said that the injury was equivalent to the child striking the ground from a fall from a building. That's just the equivalent. We don't actually know, I think, at this time exactly how the child died. That's something that will come out later on, I would assume, in discovery that is well beyond this process. But the officer has established.
Hold on, Attorney Thomas. Hold on. Attorney Robinson, you want to respond?
I do, Your Honor. The issue of timing was brought and relied upon heavily by the state, suggesting that the only moments in which this injury could have occurred was within the hour in which Mr. Brown had the child that day. And I'm getting to the point as to who it was that said that this had to have occurred then and that the child could have that occur without injuries. Excuse me. My first question went to who said there would be no injuries. My second question was going to be who said that it had to occur within an hour.
Go ahead and put the overruled, objection overruled. Go ahead.
So, Detective, which of these doctors specifically said that that a child could sustain injuries consistent with this type of fall and not have any bruising? Which doctor said that?
Like I said, I'm not sure which doctor said it, but it came from one of the I've talked to one of the examiners, and they've stated that it's possible that you could have internal head injury. Did you
document that they said that in your reporting and documentation of this incident? Did you document it?
I'm not sure. I would have to look back into my extensive report that I wrote.
Which doctor told you that the injuries, the skull fracture itself, had to have occurred within the hour preceding the child's death?
I believe the officer, that's been asked previously, and the officer answered that.
No, he didn't. He did not, Your Honor.
He gave the answer the defense counsel wanted, but if I'm not mistaken, that has been asked and answered.
Go ahead, Officer Ramos, and answer the question.
So I asked them, I said, would this injury, what timeline could it have taken place? And they said that it definitely took place within that hour time frame. This wasn't something that happened last night. This wasn't something that happened during the middle of the night. And I believe Dr. Darsaw said that if it happened in the middle of the night or if it happened the day before, the baby wouldn't be alive by the time Antoinette got up and kissed the baby goodbye. And it definitely wouldn't be alive by the time Jaquavius picked the baby up if this happened hours before or throughout the middle of the night or the day before.
And Detective, I got you. But my question to you is, who told you that? You just indicated
I,
that.
I just I just said
May I
Dr.
finish? May I
Darsal said
finish
that.
this time?
Your Honor, if Mr. Robinson can let the officer finish his answer, he might get the response he's looking for.
Mr. Attorney Robinson, just let him finish. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Go ahead.
I said Dr. Darsal was the one who stated about the time frame. And I believe DeMarcio said it too, that this wasn't something that happened yesterday or previous.
Did you document in your reports, in your reporting, which doctor or if both doctors made this assertion to you that it had to have occurred in the hour? Did you document that?
Yes, I believe so. Now, I don't know if I said exactly which one told me, but according to what GBI told me, that's what and I believe it's in the autopsy report. I don't have the autopsy report in front of me.
When was the child services intervention done? Was it near in time to the child's fall, previous fall, or was it?
And I'm going to object to this question. This has nothing
Withdrawn.
to do with
Withdrawn.
the
I
child.
withdraw, Your Honor. Detective, you said that you had
Mr.
not.
Robinson, the judge has to respond.
Okay. I withdraw. I withdrew it.
You say you withdrew. Go ahead. Proceed.
You said that you began working on this case about 8 months ago, correct?
Yes.
And
Well, a few months ago.
which one is it? Because you said 6 months after the incident. The incident was, my apologies.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly when I started working on it, but it was like maybe a few months from now. I mean, like 4 months ago from now. That's when I first initially started dealing with the case.
Okay. And to your knowledge, was that the only time, was it only one time that child services was involved, or were there more than one involvement with child services?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm still working on getting those reports from child services between two parties, both of the parties.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
Your Honor, I'm going to try to make this really briefly.
Okay.
Really brief. Is it your understanding, officer, that these injuries could not have been, the nature of these injuries could not have been sustained by just rolling out of a bed?
No.
They could not?
No, they could not.
Is it your understanding, officer, that the injuries, as severe as they were, did not necessarily have to be visible from the outside?
Yes.
And is it your understanding, officer, based on what the GBI advised you, that had these injuries occurred hours or days earlier, the child would not have lived that long?
Yes.
And it was GBI's opinion that these injuries were in fact very recent.
Yes, very recent it was that morning of.
Okay. And definitely not caused by COVID.
No.
And I believe there was just a quick follow-up. During your cross-examination by defense counsel, there was a mention of a father. Was it the grandfather of the victim or the biological father of the victim?
No, it was Antone's father.
Okay, so it's the grandfather of the child.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I have.
All right. Go ahead, Attorney Robinson.
I'll be brief, Your Honor. You mentioned timing, Detective. According to the doctors, you're saying that the doctor said not only could it have not happened the night before, but it had not it had to have happened within the hour preceding the 911 call, correct?
Yes.
All right, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Righty, closing arguments.
Your Honor, I would,
Okay, all right, go ahead, Mr. Robinson.
I'll submit on the facts, Your Honor.
All right, based upon the evidence presented, I do find that there is sufficient probable cause to bind both charges over to the Superior Court of Clayton County. That's the order of the court.
thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I be excused?
Yes, thank you.
All right, have a good day and happy holidays if I don't see you.
Happy holidays. All right, so,
I'm trying to find him. Mr. Flynn, Attorney Flynn's client. Actually, he probably should have gone first.
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer
Robinson?
Reynolds, you're excused. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
so, who do you want to do next?
Attorney Flynn's client, I believe that would be,
That's Miss Williams.
Yes. All right, we'll do Ms. Williams first. I'm going to step away for half a minute. But the deputy can bring Ms. Williams. All right, are we ready?
Your Honor, myself and the officer are here. I don't see there's Attorney Flynn, but I don't see the jail.
Okay.
Well, they're there, but they're not logged. They're not.
We don't see the defendant.
No, ma'am.
Deputy, are we ready? Or do you need a moment? Something going on? Deputy?
I believe that she's here, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Williams, hold on. We're about to start your hearing. I need to pull up your paperwork. Dante, can you locate, let's see. Um, just to confirm, she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 charges. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
Okay. All right. All right, now calling the matter of State of Georgia versus Tauna Shabria Williams, charged in warrant numbers 2024 CW 50194 murder, 2024 52039 felony murder, 2024 CW 52040 armed robbery, 2024 CW 52041 aggravated assault, 2024 CW 52042 possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, and 2024 CW 52043 conspiracy to commit a crime. Representing the state is ADA Thomas. Representing the defendant is Attorney Chris Flynn. Your witness, ADA Thomas.
Detective, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the evidence you shall give before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You can put your hand down, state your name for the record.
My name is Wilfred Norwood, Wilfred Norwood.
And how are you employed, Detective Norwood?
I'm employed by the Clayton County Police Department in the CID Criminal Investigations Division as an investigator.
Were you so employed? Actually, this is a somewhat older case, but in any case, were you assigned a case involving a defendant, Tiana Williams?
I was.
And before we get too far beyond this, when did this incident actually occur?
April the 3rd, 2019.
So we're talking about a case that's about 5 years old now, correct?
That's correct.
Were you the original detective assigned to the case?
I was not.
So it was at some point reassigned to you?
It was.
Okay. And can you tell us what happened with this and how you got involved?
Okay. I was assigned this case on October 2023, and an examination of the case revealed the following. That on April the 3rd, 2019, 26-year-old Robert Ragland drove his Ford Crown Victoria to 5470 Riverdale Road, which is the reserve at the Riverdale apartment complex. He drove his car, parked his car in front of Building S, and went into apartment S10, which is his sister's apartment. While visiting his sister overheard a phone call that her brother Robert had with what sounded like a black female who was asking where was he, when was he, how long would it take him to get to a certain place. So before Robert Ragland left his sister's apartment, he asked his sister what was building P in the same apartment complex. So his sister told him what building P was, and they both left the apartment. Now, witnesses that we interviewed said,
Stop you for a minute, detective. You said they both left the apartment. You're talking about the victim and his sister?
yes,
Okay. And did she go with him to where this building P was?
no. His sister works at the Waffle House restaurant at the front of the apartment complex,
Okay.
5470 Riverdale Road. This was about 1830 hours, well, about 6:30 p.m. I believe his sister had to be to work at 7. So it was, when he was leaving, she locked up the apartment too, and walked up to her job. And Robert went to his car.
Now, after he went to his car, what did he do next, if anything?
Okay, well, witnesses said that shortly before Robert arrived at Building P, they witnessed a black female described 19 to 20 years of age, medium complexion and build, emerged from a large hole in the wooden fence of the apartment complex. Now, there was a wooden fence that separated Riverdale, the Reserve at Riverdale apartment, from a subdivision to its south.
And this fence had a hole in it?
Yeah, a large hole that separated the apartment complex from Brookstone Road and Brookstone Road subdivision.
Okay.
They're separated by
people go in.
approximately 200 feet.
And was this a hole that people routinely used to go back and forth between, I think you said Brookstone Road and the apartment complex?
Yes, routinely, according to witnesses, according to police reports, every day.
Okay. And she was observed coming out of that hole from Brookstone Road onto the property of the complex?
Yes.
Now, let me ask you something right quick before you get started again. Did she live in the apartment complex?
No.
Where did she live?
1235 Brookstone Road, or at least that's where her mother lived.
Your Honor, I would object to these questions. It hasn't been established who she is. All we've heard is a black female came through a fence.
The black female that we're talking about lives on the other side of the fence. Doesn't live on the apartment side.
No.
Okay, we're going to get to the ID. Okay, so what did the witnesses advise you that the black female did?
Okay, now witnesses said that right before this young black female emerged through this hole in the fence, a couple of minutes earlier, 2 young black males emerged from the same hole in the fence from Brookstone Road subdivision, and that they walked over to building P and disappeared in the breezeway of building P. And then shortly after this black female that I described, she herself emerged from that hole in the fence.
Okay.
Witnesses said that once she emerged from the hole in the fence, she kind of paused, stood in the parking lot in front of building P on her phone. She appeared to be talking with someone, making a phone call. Witnesses observed shortly after Robert Ragland pulled up in his Crown Victoria in a parking spot between building S and building P, and backed in and parked, motioned over to her. They motioned to each other, and she went over and she got in this car on the driver's side, passenger side. Witnesses said that they sat there for a few minutes before Ragland started the car or drove the car to in front of building P and parked the car in a parking slot in front of building P on the west side breezeway. This building has 2 breezeways, one on each end.
Is this the same building?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Building P that the victim had talked to had asked his sister about?
Yes, apparently.
Okay, so what happened next?
Okay, so witnesses said that they watched as he parked the car and they watched as the black female, young black female, got out of the car, crossed over in front of the car and went and disappeared into the breezeway of Building P. That would be the breezeway that the car parked in front of on the west side. She disappeared into that breezeway out of sight. Witnesses said that Ragland remained in his car for a few minutes before he got out of his car and lit up a cigarette, began smoking a cigarette near his driver's side door while he apparently was waiting for the female to return. The witnesses said that he was doing that for a few minutes. And when they saw the same black female that had rolled up with him, gotten out of his car and disappeared in the breezeway, she returned back to where Robert Ragland was. They could see her. She was beckoning him, calling him, asking him to, begging him to come to where she were to follow her. Apparently, follow her into the breezeway, apparently to an apartment. Witnesses said they saw this, and that Ragland appeared to be nervous, looking around. He did not go. He seemed hesitant, and he did not go. The witnesses said that they felt watching this. All of them sitting out there watching this, they felt like something was about to go down. It made them nervous. They got up from their balconies because they're watching this from their balconies outside. They got up from their balconies,
Okay,
took the
hold on one
lounge
second.
chair.
You said they're watching from the balconies. Are we talking about other residents of the apartment complex?
Yes.
So they're just sitting on their balconies and observe
Yeah.
all this that's going on?
Yes.
Okay.
And it made them nervous. It appeared that something was afoot, not good. They took up their lounge chairs and went inside and continued watching what was happening, unfolding from their windows. The witnesses said that after a certain amount of time of trying to entice or get Ragland to follow her back into the breezeway, the black female stopped or gave up, and then once again turned and went back into the breezeway and disappeared out of sight for a few minutes. Witnesses said
Happened after that? You said something happened after that?
yes.
Okay.
Witnesses said that shortly after that, the same female that got out of the car reappeared from the breezeway and was approached Ragland and began to talk to him, and that shortly after, almost immediately after, she was being followed by two young black males that was armed with handguns. The two young black males approached the two of them from behind her, and they confronted Ragland, pointing at least one weapon at him. And witnesses said that Robert Ragland was heard to say, okay, man, okay, you got me. Before one of the black males fired, at least one shot was struck Ragland in the torso. Witnesses said that once Ragland was shot, he began to stagger back toward the rear of his car, toward the trunk area, apparently creating distance between himself and the assailants. And that at that point, one of the young black male assailants, reached into or went into Ragland's car and retrieved a black bag type of property. And he and the other shooter, they both bolted. They ran, and they ran past Ragland's car south across the parking lot back toward the large hole in the fence that separated the apartment complex from Brookstone Road apartments. The witnesses said that the black female that had gotten out of his car that was there, she was standing there when all of this happened, and she also began to run. And the witness said that he confronted her, one of the witnesses confronted her and yelled at her, you know, something like, bitch, why you running? You know, you just set that man up. This witness provided statements to us for that.
So you have those in police records? That's a
Yeah.
part of the report?
Yeah,
As a part of the report, I should say.
it's a statement. Statement form.
Statement is a part of the
Yeah.
record, not
Yes,
the record,
yes, it is.
but
Okay. So he confronted her as she was running because she ran not toward the hole in the fence, but towards building S from building P, and he was at building S. So it was pretty much a face-to-face confirmation. Got a good look at her face. So after, you know, when that was happening, Ragland staggered back around to the passenger side front quarter panel of his car, leaned against the car, pulled out a cell phone, and made a phone call to Clayton County E911. And when by the time the operator tried to communicate with him, he was too incapacitated, and he collapsed right there and died right there against his car. Later, it was determined that he died from an aortic dissection. He bled to death in turn.
okay. And he tried to call EMS, but by the time they got there, he was already too far gone. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yes.
And the persons who shot him, they were gone also?
Yes.
The young black, the black female that had met him there, where was she?
She had ran also.
And she ran after the shooting.
Yes, she was there present with him when he was confronted and shot.
Where did she run to?
The witness says she ran back behind building S, which would be in a northwesterly direction.
Was that back towards that hole in the fence, or is that in this direction?
No, it's approximately 90 degrees away from the hole in the fence.
So she left, and they don't know what happened to her after she left.
No.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. All of this that you just told us, was any of that captured on video?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Just witnesses' accounts of what they saw?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you indicated that the witnesses made statements of some sort?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how do we get back around to
Okay.
okay.
All right. Phone records showed that on April the 3rd, 2019, a text message thread began at 3:12 p.m. between Robert Ragland and someone under the identifier of T. Now, this is approximately three and a half hours before he was killed. Okay, the text message was the first text message between the two of them of 109 text messages between Ragland and T that continued for 3 hours and 25 minutes until 6:37 p.m.
Is that when the victim arrived at the location?
Yes, yes, yes. And then at that time, those text messages was followed by 3 phone calls between the two, which originated from phone number 44326.
Officer, don't read the whole number. That's
okay.
Well, we're live on YouTube.
Okay.
But the initiating call, was that from the victim to this defendant? Was that from the victim to the other number, or from the other number to the victim?
From the other number to the victim.
And the person identified themselves at that time as T?
T-E-E.
Okay. Now, did victim know who this TEE person was?
No.
Was that indicated at some point in the text messages?
Yes.
Do you recall what he said as far as who was he
Yeah.
communicating with?
Yes.
What did he do?
Okay. During the text thread, T was inquiring about purchasing some gas, which is street for marijuana. Robert Ragland sold marijuana out of his Crown Victoria. And so Ragland responded to the text messages, "Who are you?" Which revealed that Ragland did not know who this person is, not familiar with that phone number.
Okay.
Now, during that conversation, T was able to assuage suspicion and doubt to Ragland as to the validity and identity of the person texting him by convincing Ragland through the text messages that they had met once before. But Robert wasn't convinced, and by the 7th text back and forth between the two of them, Ragland insisted that this person T, this woman T, prove who she is, prove her identity by texting him a photo of herself. And he insisted on that and a text to her at 3:16. Shortly after that, he received a text message back from her of a selfie of the person he was talking to. It was a picture featuring a young Black female who apparently was talking or taking a selfie on a cell phone in a room, and that picture was texted to Ragland. It featured this female who turned out to be Tiana Williams wearing a gray or white t-shirt.
Now, before we get that far, do you have a copy of that picture that was sent to the victim on his phone?
I do.
And was that the picture that was retrieved from his phone?
Yes.
If you don't mind, if you could show that picture to the court. Just hold it up the way. Okay.
A
And
little closer for me, a little closer. Well, not that close.
yeah.
Hold it out a little, okay.
That's the picture that the victim received?
Yes.
Were you able to make an identification of who that picture, who's being depicted on that picture?
I was.
And can you tell the court who was being depicted on that picture?
Tiana Sabria Williams.
Now, the Tiana, I believe, what was the last name? Shaquay?
Williams.
Williams.
Last name is Williams.
Okay. Do you see that person on the video today?
Yes, I do.
And can you describe her by physical appearance or article of clothing?
Black female. Apparently she's wearing jail garb. And
what color is the jail garb?
It's dark from my viewpoint. It appears to be either black or dark or green. I'm not sure.
Okay.
We got colors very well.
And that's the same person that's, to the best of your knowledge, is depicted on that photograph received by the victim?
Yes, it is.
And is that the person who was insistent on purchasing marijuana on the incident date from the victim?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, is that the person who we've been talking about came through the hole?
Yes, it is.
The housing complex to the apartment complex?
From the subdivision to the apartment complex, yes.
And that's the same person that, to the best of your knowledge and investigation, was identified by the witnesses at the scene as interacting with the victim?
I would object, Your Honor. There's been no evidence that she was identified by any witnesses at the scene.
Based on the officer's investigation, Your Honor, I believe the witnesses were able to describe the person, and that's partially the basis for him being able to definitively charge this young lady with what she's been charged with.
Did the officer testify to that?
I believe he did, but I will ask him again, Your Honor.
Okay.
I have more.
Continue, officer.
Okay.
I keep stopping you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, after receiving the photo, Ragland replied that he didn't remember her, but what do you need? She said she needed 5 grams of marijuana. He was like, okay, well, where you at? I'm on Riverdale Road, 5420 Riverdale Road, apartment P10. And he's like, cool, you know, I'm in traffic, I'm in Atlanta, whatever. It's gonna be a while before I get there. So and so T indicates that okay, you know, I want 5 grams, and you know, I can pay for this 5 grams of marijuana, you know, either with money or sex or a combination of both, way you want to do it. She indicates in text that she has her own place at that apartment complex, apartment P10, and that they can meet there. Like I said, the text messages going back and forth between the two of them went on for 3 hours. You know, this is the gist of it, but there was also, they were just texting back and forth, mainly from T, telling Robert, hey, you know, you can trust me. We've met before. We've even had sex before. And he's like, you know, I don't remember that, but hey, if you want to buy marijuana, I know I'll be there. I'll let you know when I'm there or whatever. So so time went by, and you know, and so Robert, when he arrived there, like I said earlier, he went to his sister's apartment first. We have the GPS movements of Robert's cell phone prior to and during the time of this crime. And the cell phone GPS movement shows his car that moved down Riverdale Road and entered the apartment complex at about 18:35 hours. That's about 6:35 p.m. And the phone stopped basically in front of building S, and I believe it was there about 15 minutes, which coordinates with Ragland visiting his sister there, who lived in the apartment. I believe it was S10. So, and it was during that time that phone records show that Ragland received a phone call from that phone number that belonged to T.
So
But
the person is still calling and texting when he gets to his sister's residence?
yes.
Okay.
Now, right before he gets there, at 18:13 hours, which is 6:13, they're texting, and she seemed to be going out of her way to show that, hey, everything's on the up and up, because she's telling him things about herself. You know, I got this apartment. This is what we want to do. I have a balcony. I have a newborn baby, or I have a child in the apartment that was born February the 1st, and I don't want to smoke around the child. And she does have a son that was born February 1st. She said in a text message, she'd rather smoke on the balcony, you know, while the child is inside sleeping. They can smoke on the balcony, and then they can go back inside and have sex. So Robert was like, cool, we're cool with that in their texting back and forth. So at 6:23 p.m., there is a phone call from Ragland to T. That phone call lasted 4 minutes and 21 seconds. 10 minutes later, at 6:33 p.m., there was a phone call from T to Ragland. That lasted 51 seconds. Now, keep in mind that this is when his GPS is showing that he's at his sister's apartment. He's in front of building S, which coordinates with what his sister said, that he received phone calls while visiting her. And the final phone call was 1 minute later at 6:34 p.m. from Ragland to T, which lasted 2 minutes, 37 seconds. And these all coordinate with the GPS movements that we have, the cell phone.
Quick question for you regarding the GPS movements. Is this based off of something done with the defendant's phone?
Yeah, no, with the victim's phone.
I'm sorry, I meant the victim's phone.
Yes.
So you all were able to do a I can't think of the exact term, but you all excuse me?
Cell hawk analysis.
And that was able to track the victim's whereabouts during a certain period of time.
What did he just say? What did he say? A what? A cell what?
The brand name is Cellhawk.
Okay, all right.
And what does it do?
It's cell phone analysis, forensic analysis.
And through that analysis, you can track where a phone has been going.
Yes, and you can retrieve data from your hard drive, pictures, text, phone calls, videos,
Okay.
whatever's contained on your hard drive of your cell phone.
Is that what's commonly called a cell dump?
No, yes, a cell dump. Yes.
Okay. So based on being able to analyze the contents of the phone, you were able to track the victim's goings and comings up to when he was shot.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I interrupted you again. So where was he at that point? At this point?
Okay, so apparently he according to the witnesses, she emerged from the hole and got in the car with him sometime around 1835, 1840, because the 911 call went out at 7 p.m. exactly. So with the information that we had learned, we wanted to interview Ms. Williams. So we interviewed her in January of this year.
And how were you able to identify her?
I identified her through numerous police reports, driver's license photograph, mugshot in Clayton County Jail. She's been arrested before. It was very easy.
So she has a history that you were able to
Yeah.
track.
Yes, and the cell phone number that was used 4 years ago to text and call Robert Ragland during this day, it was still active in her name. She still had the cell phone number. She haven't changed the cell phone number 4 years later.
So 4 years ago, this number was in her name,
Yes,
and it's still in her name that you know of?
it was in her name 4 years later until I interviewed her January, I believe January the 9th.
Now, question. Based on her ownership of the phone 4 years ago, were you able to make a determination of where she lives or where she lived then that you think? No, let me back up. Based on the information retrieved from the cell phone, what was listed as her address of record at that time, 4 years ago when this happened?
Now, I have the cell phone information from the victim, not Ms. Williams.
Okay.
But what I determined during the investigation is that she was living at 1235 Brookstone Road, which is the subdivision directly across from this apartment complex, building P, almost exactly, what's the word, diagonal, not straight from the hole in the fence.
So straight shot from her house through the hole to where the incident occurred?
Yes, about 200 feet.
Okay, and this is where she was living at that time that you did. That's the address of her record at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we interviewed Ms. Williams in January. During the interview, she admitted that the phone number that texted and called Robert was hers.
Okay.
That she did text and call Ragland about buying weed. That the person in the text, the picture, is her. She admitted that she
photograph, detective, would that be the photograph you just showed the court? That's
Yeah.
her? She
Yeah.
admitted that was her?
Yes.
Okay, please continue.
Plus that photograph is on her Facebook page now. The same picture. Okay. So she admitted that she was negotiating with Ragland about sex for weed, and that she named building apartment P10. Now apartment P10 was an abandoned apartment. No one lived there. She admitted that.
Okay.
Apparently unlawful.
Did she indicate why she would tell him that was her residence?
Well, I asked her that. I asked her, what would you have told Robert once you opened that door and it's vacant apartment? She had no answer for that. She said that it was her that met Robert, got in his the car when they put up.
Officer, I
Building.
think the last thing we heard clearly was she did admit that it was her on the. Detective, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
It broke up a little bit. And I think the last thing you said was something around that she admitted that it was her on the photograph that we just saw.
Yes.
And what
And
happened?
and she also admitted that it was her, yes, that witnesses saw waiting for Robert to pull up in the parking lot and that got in his car. And it was her that was in the passenger side car, driver's side, passenger side seat when they pulled up in front of apartment P10 or building P.
Okay.
She did not she had no explanation of why she lied to him about not having an apartment. She at the time she lived at 1235 Brookstone Road, which is on the other side of Holding Fence, building P. She said she did direct Robert to, park in front of building P. She admitted that the apartment, was an abandoned apartment. She called it she referred to it as a bando. And she told me that that was common, in her, to her. She admitted that Raglan was,
Hold on, detective. She indicated that was common to her.
yeah, that she's done things in abandoned apartments before.
Okay, hold on one second, officer. Your Honor, it looks like the jail is gone. Am I missing something?
I don't. I guess so. Yeah, I'm sure they'll try to log back on her. Just hold tight. Okay, we're back. All right, go ahead.
Detective, do you recall where you dropped off at?
Yes.
Okay, could you please continue?
Well, basically, during the interview, Tiana admitted that she admitted in the interview that Raglan did not go with her up those stairs in that breezeway to the apartment. She admitted that he was afraid to, for whatever reason, and that he did not. Now Tiana, when we interviewed her, she denied that she was setting up Raglan when she met him. She denied that there was anyone in that apartment, in that vacant apartment waiting on them. She denied that.
Okay.
So we met with a witness who completed statements formed and interviews that he was there. Okay. Now, this witness was presented with a 6-person photo lineup featuring six black females, similar features, age, tone, weight, and one of which featured Tiana. He was presented this photo lineup by another detective that knew nothing about this case, wasn't involved, had no knowledge of it. According to the Department of Policy, in a private interview room, and he presented that photo lineup, which featured Tiana, and the witness identified Tiana as the person that he had witnessed 4 years ago, emerged from that hole in the fence, that got in the car with Raglan, that went into that breezeway, that reemerged from the breezeway, and attempt to get him to follow her into the breezeway, that then appeared again from the breezeway, this time followed by 2 black males who was armed, 2 young black males that was armed, that confronted Raglan. That Tiana's the same female that was standing there when this happened, when Raglan was shot, and that when his property was taken from his car and the male subject assailants ran, and she ran also, that she is the same subject, the same person that 4 years ago he confronted face to face, confronted her verbally face to face, and he easily made a photo ID and completed statements, both written and on video, of those accounts 4 years later.
Okay, now when you say confronted her, is he the person I believe you previously testified that said you set up it or something to that effect?
Yeah.
And when the confrontation with the 2 black males and the victim occurred, where was she positioned?
She was in their midst. They were all there.
So she was standing right there with them?
Yes, yes.
And when they left the scene, did she run off with them or did she go in a different direction?
She went in a different direction.
Okay. And property that belonged to the victim was taken during this altercation?
Yes.
And did you conduct the interview with her or was that done by another officer?
I did.
And she admitted everything except for being a party to the actual
shooting
and theft part?
Yes.
Did she ever say anything about the 2 men who shot the victim?
She don't know anything about that.
Even though she was standing right there?
Yes.
And she admitted standing right there?
She admitted that she did not admit that she was there when he was shot. The witnesses said that she was there.
Okay. So when did she leave the scene? What did she say happened?
Oh, she said that after Robert didn't want to go into the apartment, they just hugged and he gave her a hug and then she walked away, went home.
Is that consistent with what the witnesses said happened?
No.
And is that consistent with I withdraw the question. Now, after interviewing her, what happened next, if anything?
Well, after we interviewed her, she was free to go. And I advised her that, that I intended to seek, make an application before a magistrate, and I intend to seek these charges, which I did a week later in January. I believe it was January 16th.
Now, this is December the 9th, almost a year later. What happened between January 16th and now?
Okay, I obtained the warrants against her in January 2020 of this year. And once the warrant was taken, Tiana became aware of these warrants. Well, let me go back. On the day that I interviewed her here at Homicide, when that interview was over and she left the building, I tried calling her maybe an hour or two later. Her phone was disconnected the same day. It was
Okay, and
never,
this is the same phone that came up on the cell phone records?
yes, same phone number that text Raglan that she'd had for 4 years. It was suddenly deactivated or turned off. Service was turned off. I couldn't
Okay.
reach her. She became aware of the charges, and she apparently went on the run, became a fugitive for 10 months.
Were you all able to locate her?
Yes, we developed information intelligence, which led the United States Marshals to apprehend her in Columbus, Ohio, in October of this year.
So she left Atlanta and went to Columbus? Is that what happened? That you know of?
Yes, that's where she was found. The exact sequence of her movements, I'm not sure.
Okay. But you have not seen her from January of this year until recently?
I haven't seen her at all since January, since I interviewed her in January. I'm just aware of what's her whereabouts, as far as being captured.
Okay. Have you had occasion to speak with her again since she's been back in Clayton County custody?
No, I haven't taken that opportunity.
Okay. Your Honor, I need a quick second. I'm not gonna hold up the court's time. Make sure I haven't missed anything. So just to be clear, when the person that you've identified as Tiana Williams met with the victim, she got in his car?
Yes,
She directed him to Building P,
yes,
and at Building P is where the other two individuals got involved,
yes,
and she was standing there with them when the shooting occurred. With them, not the victim.
yeah. You kind of cut out, but I think it's yes,
Let me make sure you understood my question. She was standing with the other individuals who shot the victim.
yes,
He never went to the apartment that she mentioned in the text messages,
no,
but though that apartment was in Building P.
yes.
Do you know how this young lady even found out about this victim? It appears from what you testified to, he didn't know her. Is that correct?
Yes.
How did, or do you know? If you don't know, to say so.
I don't exactly know how she found out about Robert. His sister lives out there, but I don't know if they're the.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he doesn't live there.
No, he didn't live there.
Your Honor, I believe that's all I have of the detective reserve right for redirect.
All right, Cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, my name's Chris Flynn. I've got some questions to ask you about this case.
Yes, sir.
You indicated to the court you took out a murder warrant in January of 2024. Is that right?
Yeah.
There were additional warrants taken out in September of 2024. Did you take out those warrants as well?
That's affirmative.
And those were warrants for felony murder, armed robbery, aggravated assault, possession of a weapon or the commission of a crime, and conspiracy. Is that right?
That's correct.
What was the reason for taking out it's the same case. Is that correct?
That's right.
We're talking about the same thing. What was the reasoning for taking out the second set of warrants?
Because the case investigation was still developing. And it developed to that point.
So you decided you needed to take out more warrants. Is that right?
the case was still developing, the investigation was still developing.
What else did you develop from the first warrant? And because I heard everything leading up to the taking of the first warrant in January of 2024, you testified about that.
Mhm.
And then said that you hadn't seen Miss Williams for 10 months. What developed after January of 2024?
That led to the additional charges.
Mhm.
All of the elements needed to take the additional charges was there in January. I simply took the warrant for murder, for malice murder, I believe, and that I can take the rest of the warrants later.
No. I know you have the ability to do it, but you made it seem like there was something else that developed after January of 2024. So it seems from your answer, nothing else really developed. You just decided to go take out other warrants in September of 2024. Is that correct?
One development that occurred after January was a witness came forward.
Okay. Is this the witness that you indicated confronted Miss Williams?
That's affirmative.
What's the name of that witness?
His last name is Banks.
Yeah, I would object at this time.
I can't think of his first
Now,
name.
hold on, detective, hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna object at this time, partly because this is an ongoing investigation, partly because we're on live on YouTube and this is a witness to a homicide. And I don't want to risk the possibility that something could happen to this witness who's trying to be a good citizen by announcing his information on live online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
sorry.
Attorney Flynn.
Well, I mean, my response to it is that I'm just trying to nail down some more specifics about this. The detective had gone through this whole testimony about witnesses told me this, witnesses told me that, and there's no specificity to who these witnesses are. Do they live there? Do they not live there? So I think I should be allowed to cross-examine him on the context of these statements.
And Your Honor, state would respond with, this is going in the direction of discovery, all of which will be available in the detective's investigative summary, and which would also include any statements that were made by his client.
I'm going to overrule. Go ahead and proceed, Attorney Flynn.
So you said that the witness's name was Banks, is that right?
I believe his last name was Banks. I
Okay.
don't have the case file with me.
Okay. A couple of questions about this witness. So you said you spoke to this witness after January of 2024, is that right?
Yes.
Did this witness give a statement prior to January of 2024?
That witness, yes, spoke with uniform officers during the time of the homicide 4 years ago.
Did this witness give a written statement?
I can't find a written statement in the record.
Was there any audio or video statement from this witness?
Not that I located.
The witness, again, that we're referring to is the one you indicated confronted Miss Williams in the parking lot. Is that right?
Yes.
And we're talking about the same person. Is that right?
Yes.
And this is the same witness you said that you presented a lineup to who identified Miss Williams. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. The lineup, was that done after January 2024?
Yes.
Okay. So this was something that you did on your own, I guess, in investigating this case after January of 2024.
Yes.
You contacted this witness and said, hey, you're listed in the incident report. I'd like to talk to you about this, what you saw. Is that correct?
More or less.
I mean, basically.
Yes.
Correct. The witness didn't come to you. You tracked the witness down.
More or less.
Did you get a written statement at that time from the witness?
Yes.
All right. And then around that time, that's when you presented the lineup to the witness. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
A couple of questions about that. You indicated, and you found this as I guess, a clue or something you took note of, that you indicated the witness approached Miss Williams and said, you know, you've set that boy up.
More or less. Yes. Yes.
Something like that, something to that effect.
Yes.
Did Mr. Banks indicate that Miss Williams responded in any way to that?
No.
Did Miss Banks say, oh, you're right, you got me?
Did who say that?
Did Miss Williams say anything that
No.
incriminated herself?
No.
Okay, and so this is immediately after the shooting, correct?
Yes.
And so the only evidence you have regarding this case is that a witness, Mr. Banks, approached Miss Williams and says, you know, you set that boy up, correct?
It's not the only evidence I have.
No. Regarding this particular situation. In other words, Detective, you found it important to say that Mr. Banks said to Miss Williams,
Yes,
"No, you set that boy up."
yes,
All right. Mr. Banks doesn't know anything about the situation, correct? He was standing by somewhere in the parking lot or in the apartments, correct?
what situation are you referring to?
The murder that we're talking about.
He knows about that situation. He witnessed it.
He witnessed what he saw, but
Yes.
he didn't talk to Mr. Ragland, correct?
No,
He didn't talk to the shooters, correct?
no,
He didn't talk to Miss Williams other than saying, "You know, you set that boy up," correct?
that's correct.
So he is making an observation or opinion on what he thinks happened, correct?
That's correct.
He doesn't know anything about the text between Miss Williams and Mr. Ragland, correct?
No,
So again, he's speculating in his mind about what went on and is telling you that. In other words, he's saying, "I approached her, this is what I said to her." That's based on his speculation of what went on.
I think that would be fair.
Okay. Because again, Miss Williams didn't give him any evidence as far as a confession, correct?
No, she didn't.
You've charged her with armed robbery. Mr. Banks didn't say, "Hey, after Mr. Ragland was shot, Miss Williams reached in and stole something out of the car," correct?
No, other witnesses told us that.
Not about
No.
Miss Williams.
Not about Miss Williams? No, no.
You had no evidence that Miss Williams stole anything from the scene.
I never said she took anything.
Okay, well, I just wanted to clarify what you just said. My specific question to you was that Mr. Banks did not tell you any evidence regarding this case other than what his speculation was, correct?
Other than what he saw.
Correct,
And he shared his speculation.
correct. But I was using an example that he did
Mhm.
not tell you, for instance, something that would be incriminating. "Hey, Miss Williams stole something out of the car." He never told you anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The only people you had witnesses who said things were stolen out of the car, or a bag, I think you said, was stolen out of the car, but that was from one of the shooters, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Nobody ever said Miss Williams took anything out of the car.
That's
Correct?
correct.
Nobody ever said Miss Williams took anything from Mr. Ragland. Is that correct?
Never took anything out of the car. I never took anything from Ragland. No.
In fact, what they told you was after the shooting, Miss Williams fled
Yes.
and was confronted by Mr. Banks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And as you told the prosecutor a couple of times, I think, that the gentleman who shot Mr. Ragland fled in a different direction than Miss Williams did, correct?
Yes.
So Miss Williams, it wasn't the shooting occurred and then she ran off with the two shooters. She went in a different direction, correct?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to ask you a little bit about the cell phone information that you provided the court. You went into great detail about that you had Mr. Ragland's cell phone information and his location. Is that right?
Yes.
You talked about that you could, you knew he was at the apartment. You knew he was in his sister's place. You knew that he parked in front of that building. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, there's none of that evidence has anything to do with Miss Williams because we know Mr. Ragland was there, correct?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, we're not disputing, nobody's disputing the fact that Mr. Ragland was found shot in the parking lot of the apartment complex, right?
You're going to have to repeat that again. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, you know where Mr. Ragland was found, correct?
Yes.
You know he was found at that location, correct?
In front of Building P.
Right. So all that location information about Mr. Ragland, other than providing where he was that day, you know where he was found. He was found at the incident location, right?
Yes.
Okay. And to contrast that, you don't have any information regarding what Miss Williams was doing that day as far as from her phone, correct?
At what point of the day, sir?
Any point of the day. The prosecutor asked you, do you have any cell phone location information from Miss Williams' phone? And you answered no.
That's correct.
Okay, so you have no evidence to give this court regarding the location of Miss Williams from her cell phone, correct?
Not from the cell phone, no, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about the witnesses in a moment, but I'm talking specifically about her cell phone. You understand?
I understand.
Okay. Let me ask you a little bit about the text between Miss Williams and Mr. Ragland. You said the texts were essentially Mr. Ragland is a weed dealer. Is that right?
Yes.
And I assume how long have you been a detective?
About 18 years.
Okay.
Been a
So you've
police officer for
investigated,
35.
investigated drug cases and sales of drugs and that type of thing before, correct?
As it relates to homicide, I've never been a narcotics detective.
Okay. But you're aware that drug dealers typically use their cell phone and use texting and other messages of communications to make those sales, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Ragland texting Miss Williams or them texting each other, there's nothing unusual about that because that's his line of business.
Not at all.
Okay. It's nothing unusual about Miss Williams trying to assure someone who's doing something illegal that she can be trusted, that he can sell the product to her, correct?
I don't know what she thinks.
I'm not asking you what she thinks. I'm asking you based on the text messages and what you know Mr. Ragland's line of work is, there's nothing unusual about a potential buyer trying to assure the dealer, hey, it's okay to sell me the product.
I can't answer that question. I don't know what she's thinking. I've never investigated narcotics. I don't know what she's thinking.
Well, you made a
You
speculation.
asked me if it's unusual. I have no idea what's usual for Tiana Williams or you or anyone else.
Okay,
How you
well, that's
conduct your
actually a good
business.
point, Detective. You have no idea if these text messages from Miss Williams to Mr. Ragland are legit or not legit, do you?
Legit in what way, sir? Are you inferring that they are from her phone but not from her?
No, sir.
What's your
If you
question?
listen to my question, you have, as you just said, you have no way of knowing what Miss Williams is thinking, correct?
That's right.
You have no way of knowing what Mr. Ragland is thinking, correct?
Yes.
And so you have text messages that you've drawn a conclusion to, but you have no way of knowing whether this is a legitimate drug deal or not.
No, just
Know that. You don't know one way or the other.
yeah. That's right.
Correct, right?
I just said yes.
Okay. So this could be an entirely legitimate, although illegal, drug deal between Miss Williams and Mr. Ragland, playing out just like every other drug deal he commits, correct?
It very well could have been.
All right. You indicated that Miss Williams, that she was seen coming through a hole in a fence.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And you indicated that she actually lives on the other side, or you found out through your investigation that she lives on the other side of that fence.
Yes.
The other side of that fence, so again, she's not in the area, she's not in an area that she doesn't live in. She actually lives in that area, correct?
That's correct.
And one of the things you mentioned to the judge, or again, that you put up as a possible clue for you, was the fact that she didn't tell Mr. Ragland where she truly lived. That she had to meet at an abandoned apartment.
Okay, you probably inferred that, but I didn't testify to that. I didn't say that.
Okay, so then I'll ask it the other way. So you do not believe there's anything to take for this court to take from the fact that she agreed to meet him at the abandoned apartment? There's nothing, that's not really a big deal. Would you agree with that?
I think it is a big deal.
Okay, well, that's what I was asking you. You indicated to the court that you seemed to think it was unusual that she didn't live there, but she was having him meet her at an abandoned apartment or wanted to go to an abandoned apartment.
Yeah, I think it's unusual to have someone meet you at an abandoned apartment,
All right.
which you represented as your apartment.
All right. You don't
That's
think
unusual.
you didn't have any thought that maybe the person who's buying the illegal substance doesn't want the drug dealer to know where they live?
I don't know what she's thinking.
Okay. So again, you really don't know one way or the other because you said you don't investigate drug cases. You don't know whether that makes sense or not, correct?
Exactly what part?
the fact that maybe the buyer of the illegal product, the illegal drugs, doesn't want the drug dealer to know exactly where she lives.
Awesome.
It kind of makes sense though, doesn't it?
Your
No.
Honor, sorry, I'm
They
gonna
do not.
object this time. Hold on, officer. I'm gonna object.
Objection.
This goes way beyond the scope of anything I ever asked. I asked nothing about a drug deal or anything like that because that's not what happened. That might have been what she tried. That might have been what was transmitted as a pretext to get the victim on the location. But upon arrival at the location, no drug deal or anything resembling a drug deal is what occurred. Nor did I ask the detective
Your
about it.
Honor,
There's some
if I can,
testimony about an abandoned apartment.
Yes, there was, Your Honor, but that there was also a mention of having sex in exchange for drugs, but the drug deal itself did not occur. So I'm not understanding why we're trying to get into what may or may not have been the intent of the defendant. The detective has no way of knowing that, nor has anyone testified that a drug deal did in fact occur.
Your Honor, if I could respond to that,
Go ahead.
that's exactly the defense's point. The state doesn't have any idea why they're meeting at the abandoned apartment. They're trying to use that fact to insinuate, as the detective in the state did, oh, look, she lives over here, but she's wanting to meet at the abandoned apartment and she doesn't really live there, so she's lying. What I'm suggesting is they're not even considering what the alternative reasoning is. So they're speculating as to the reason they want, and the detective in particular is not considering that, you know what, that kind of makes sense why the person buying might not want the drug dealer to know where they live. So the state can't have it both ways on that.
So I believe I've heard enough testimony about that. I
Okay.
think you got it in, so you can move on.
Okay. Detective, let me ask you a few other questions. You indicated that we talked about Mr. Banks and his statement. You indicated at the beginning of your testimony, you said witnesses.
Yes.
Witnesses said Miss Williams did this. Witnesses. I'm not going to ask you all their names. How many witnesses are we talking about?
4.
And were these witnesses that spoke to the officer, the initial officer in the incident?
Yes.
Responding officers? So these are people who are named in the incident report. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so what you're telling the court is this is what the incident report says, or this is what they told the responding officer, correct?
Yes.
Were they interviewed by any detective, you or anyone else since then? Or is Mr.
Yes.
Banks the only one? I'm sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yes.
They have been? Have they
Yes.
given written statements?
To the point that they can. Some of the witnesses are out of state. We have interviewed them by phone and on video.
Okay, so
Yeah.
these are the witness, what I'm getting at is the witness statements you're referring to, these have been followed up on by your office or by you or another detective, is that correct?
By me and,
Okay.
and my partner.
Okay. In any of these witness statements, did any of the witnesses say Miss Williams said anything to the 2 shooters?
No.
Okay. So you don't have any evidence that Miss Williams had any interaction with the shooters other than she was there at the location at the time this occurred, correct?
Well, you said interaction. I think that's subjective because the witness said that after she disappeared back into that breezeway the second time, she reappeared the final time they were with her. So that's perception of the witnesses that they were with her. I would call that interacting. Maybe they weren't speaking or singing, but they were with her.
Okay. I wrote down actually that what you had testified to is they were following her.
Yes.
Which is it? With her or they were following her?
You can follow someone, be with them. You can be with someone and follow them. I can walk with you and be right next to you, behind you. I'm following you.
Okay.
One and the same. It's not a big separation there.
Okay. But other than this perception of the witnesses, again, they didn't give you any evidence or say anything about, oh, we heard Miss Williams say this, or we heard Miss Williams
I
say
think
that.
I've already just answered that. No.
Okay. I just wanna make
Detective
sure.
Norwood? No, sir. Please answer Mr. Attorney Flynn's questions.
They didn't give you any evidence or any indication that they heard Miss Williams say anything to the shooters, correct?
That is correct.
Have you arrested anyone else on this case other than Miss Williams?
No.
Couple more questions. You indicated that you interviewed Miss Williams in January of 2024, correct?
Yes, sir.
She admitted that she was with Mr. Ragland that day, correct?
Yes.
She admitted she was texting with him that day, correct?
Yes.
He admitted that she was texting for drugs with him, correct?
Yes.
And she offered sex, is that correct?
Yes.
He admitted to you that she didn't live at that abandoned apartment, is that correct?
Yes.
Obviously, if she had lied about any of those things and you had those texts saying otherwise, you would have thought that is a clue as far as her potential guilt in this case, correct?
I did take those as clues. Yeah. And they were very helpful clues.
That she admitted to everything that you knew to be the truth?
Yes. And it played a substantial part in my final decisions in the investigation.
Okay, but don't you think it would have been a bigger red flag to you if she said, no, I wasn't there. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm gonna object, speculative.
I'm gonna overrule it. Go ahead, Attorney Flynn.
Don't you think it would have been a bigger red flag or clue to you if she had, I mean, she was honest with you, if she had lied about her whereabouts or lied about what she was communicating to Mr. Ragland?
I have no idea.
Okay, again, that's not something you considered in this case. You only considered what we've heard to the judge. Is that right?
I consider everything.
Okay. It sounds like ultimately in this case that the only evidence that you have against Miss Williams is the fact that she was the last one alive with Mr. Ragland. You don't have any, and would you agree with that or no?
No, I do not agree with that. I have a witness that says that she was standing there when he was killed, not the last person alive. She was there when he was confronted and killed.
Okay. And you're excluding the possibility of the fact that Mr. Ragland, who was dealing drugs, could have just met up with the wrong people and somebody been after him. That doesn't have anything to do with Miss Williams. You're eliminating that as a possibility. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Based on everything that I've learned, based on the witness testimony, yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Actually, Your Honor, no.
All right, so closing arguments. ADA, Thomas?
Your Honor, I'm gonna reserve to the end.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Attorney Flynn.
Your Honor, I know we're not at a jury trial on this case, and it's the preponderance of evidence that the court has to consider, but
Right.
there is really nothing here. They have Miss Williams at the scene, and that's it. They have no statements from her incriminating herself, other than the fact that she had, again, if it had been the opposite, if she was like, no, I wasn't there, I don't know what you're talking about, then I guarantee you it would have been, well, she lied to us and we had her there. She's admitted to everything that she did in this case, which was attempting to buy marijuana, but the state has absolutely no evidence linking her to the murder. They don't have any text. They don't have any text between Miss Williams and the purported killers in this case. Hey, okay, I'm meeting up with Mr. Ragland. This is what we're going to do. You know, I'll tell him to come into this. The case really lacks the absence of anything other than her mere presence tying her to this event. And I know it's unusual in a probable cause hearing to have this, but it seems very, very clear. And we would ask that you dismiss all charges against Miss Williams in this case. And if the state wants to investigate more and take it to the grand jury and try to get an indictment there, then certainly they have the ability to do that. But they have not presented enough to even survive probable cause in this case.
All righty, ADA, Thomas?
Your Honor, I've seen quite a few murders in my time, and this one right here, it's circumstantial in that she's not the one that's pulled the trigger, but she was there the entire time. She is the string that drug the victim to the location where he was shot. Now, it could be argued, I assume, that, oh, he was just there to visit his sister, so that's just a coincidence. No, it's not. His sister didn't live in Building P. In fact, his sister had to tell, the victim, had to take him to Building P because he didn't know where Building P was. He wasn't going to Building P. Yeah, it's a coincidence. She happens to live in the subdivision right next to this apartment complex. She comes to that fence, that hole in the fence, right behind the shooters, the two men. All of that is a big coincidence, but it's a big coincidence that turns into a string that ties her to involvement in this armed robbery murder. Now, how do we know that? We got 100, I believe it was 109 phone calls in 3 hours to a person who she does not even know, who definitely didn't know her because he had to ask her who she was. You know, I contend that's really weird. Now, she might want to purchase marijuana, and maybe she just having a fix. I don't know, but that's extremely unusual. You're trying to get this person as best as you can. She was probably texting. When she finishes one text, she starts up with the next one, trying to get this young man to this apartment complex where he can be robbed. And as it turned out, robbed and murdered. The detective testified he's actually interviewed her. And despite what defense counsel is contending, she admitted to pretty much everything the detective talked about until you get to the part where the young man gets shot and killed and he gets robbed. But we know she's involved because we have a witness, at least one, possibly more, who actually saw her there standing with the shooters as they shot and robbed the victim. She's involved. If nothing else, if she wasn't involved, seemed to me, she would have been trying to get the victim assistance. She didn't. She ran away. She stood there with them, and when it was over, they robbed him, and everybody ran away from the scene. She made no effort to get this man help. While he's dying, he has to get his own help. She wasn't there. So is this just a marijuana sale that went real bad? I don't think so. I think this young lady was a party to setting this man up, during which time he was murdered so that they could rob him. State would contend that there is sufficient probable cause for both warrants for murder, felony murder, and murder, and the remaining charges, and would ask the court to transfer this case to Superior Court for further prosecution.
Based upon the evidence presented, I do find that there is sufficient probable cause to bind all these charges over. I am convinced that Ms. Shabria was involved. Ms. Williams was involved in this setup and eventual murder of the victim. That's the order of the court.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor, Madam.
Detective, you're free to go. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Judge Kate Johnson.
Hmm?
Before you
Yes.
start your next hearing, can I inquire about Montavious Garrison?
Okay, go ahead.
So he was the one that advised me that his family hired an attorney. Do we have a continuance date for him? Are we still bringing him out?
You probably need to bring him out.
And
Probably need to bring.
while we have, is there any more announcements? My legal assistant is trying to do as much paperwork as she can. And I know it's been a minute since we've heard from the other attorneys.
Okay.
Is this Mr. Garrison at the jail?
Yeah, just him.
Yeah, okay.
Are we live on YouTube, Judge?
Yes.